Desperate measures, the mining vessel. Persistent Dream shuddered violently as another plasma bolt slammed into her port shields. Captain Zara Chen gripped her command chair, watching the shield indicators drop from amber to angry red. 20 years she'd commanded this vessel through asteroid fields and solar storms. But nothing compared to the chaos unfolding now. 3 raider ships circled like hungry wolves, their sleek forms a stark contrast to her bulky mining hauler. The Persistent Dream wasn't built for combat. She was meant to crack asteroids, not dodge plasma fire. Yet here they were, dancing on the edge of destruction in the outer rim of the Kepler system. "Shields at 15%, shouted Navigator Crix, his blue-scaled hands flying over his console. The Altarian's usually calm demeanor had given way to barely controlled panic. "Captain, we cannot sustain another volley." Zara's mind raced through their options. The nearest patrol station was 3 days away at maximum burn, and their engines were already running hot from trying to outmaneuver the raiders. They needed something desperate, something insane enough that even pirates wouldn't follow. "Prep for emergency jump," she commanded, her voice cutting through the bridge chaos. "Random coordinates, maximum distance." Chief Engineer Volta's mechanical voice crackled over the comm system. The synthetic being rarely showed emotion, but even their tone carried concern. "Captain, an uncharted jump could deposit us inside. A star or worse than being vaporized in the next 30 seconds. Zara interrupted. Another impact rocked the ship, and somewhere in the lower decks, she heard the distinctive sound of hull plating giving way. "Do it!" The jump drive's whine filled the bridge, drowning out the proximity alarms and damage reports. Space itself seemed to twist around them, reality bending in ways that made even experienced spacers queasy. The Raiders' final salvo passed through empty space as the Persistent Dream vanished into the void. They emerged 17 light years away, the sudden transition from chaos to silence almost deafening. But the silence didn't last long. Proximity alarms immediately began screaming, again, though this time for an entirely different reason. "By the 7 suns," breathed Crix, his scales shifting to a pale green of amazement. "Captain, you need to see this." The main view screen flickered to life, and Zara felt her breath catch. They'd emerged in the middle of a graveyard. Not just any graveyard, a battlefield frozen in time. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of derelict ships floated in eerie silence, their twisted hulls telling stories of a battle that must have raged for days. Some vessels were split clean in half, their internal structures exposed like anatomical diagrams. Others were peppered with so many holes they resembled metallic Swiss cheese. But what caught her attention most were the designs. These weren't modern ships. The angular hull configurations, the obsolete weapon mountings, the distinctive blue and silver coloring that even centuries of void exposure hadn't completely erased. These were human ships. Old Earth Empire vessels from before the Great Collapse, when humanity ruled a third of the known galaxy. "Damage report," Zara ordered, forcing herself to focus on immediate concerns. Volta's assessment was grim. The main engines were offline, likely permanently. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Life support functioning at 60% capacity. They had perhaps 2 weeks of air if they were careful, less if they tried any significant repairs. "Captain," interrupted Communications Officer Dash, her feathered head tilting in that peculiar way her species did when puzzled. "I'm picking up a signal. It's coming from one of the derelicts." On screen, a small craft detached from one of the larger wrecks. It moved with surprising grace through the debris field, dodging floating chunks of armor plating and frozen atmosphere with practiced ease. As it drew closer, Zara could make out its configuration. A human design, but heavily modified. Extra thrusters had been welded to its frame at odd angles, and what looked like mining equipment hung from improvised hardpoints. "Incoming transmission," Dash announced. The view screen crackled, revealing a human face that hadn't seen a proper shave in months. Wild brown hair stuck out at odd angles from beneath a battered welding cap, and grease smudges decorated both cheeks like war paint. But the man's eyes sparkled with an enthusiasm that seemed wildly inappropriate given their situation. "Well," Well, well, the human exclaimed, grinning broadly. Visitors. Been about 3 months since anyone stumbled into my little corner of nowhere. Name's Jax Cooper, salvage specialist extraordinaire, tinkerer of the impossible, and current sole-living resident of what I call the graveyard of giants. Your ship looks like she's taken a beating. Pirates? Zara nodded slowly, still processing the situation. Captain Zara Chen, mining vessel Persistent Dream. We made an emergency jump to escape raiders. Our ship is badly damaged. Jax's grin somehow got wider. Badly damaged, she says. Ma'am, from where I'm sitting, your ship looks like someone fed her through a meat grinder backwards. But lucky for you, you've just jumped into the single best repair yard in the galaxy, assuming you don't mind using pre-owned parts and have a flexible interpretation of safety regulations. Are you saying you can repair our ship? Volta interjected, their skepticism evident even through the synthetic voice modulation. Jax laughed, a sound that echoed through the comm channel. Repair? Oh, my mechanical friend, thinking too small. Why repair when you can improve? You've got a standard Meridian-class mining hauler there, yeah? Good bones, solid framework, but boring as watching paint dry in vacuum. Give me 2 days, and access to this graveyard, and I'll give you something that'll make those raiders wet themselves if they ever find you again. Crix's scales shifted to a pattern indicating deep suspicion. You're talking about kitbashing. That's illegal in most systems. Illegal, schmegel, Jax waved dismissively. You know what else is illegal? Being dead, which is what you'll be if you try limping home on what's left of your engines. Besides, we're in uncharted space, surrounded by abandoned military hardware. That's technically salvage under maritime law section. Actually, I forgot which section, but trust me, it's legal enough. Zara exchanged glances with her bridge crew. They were all thinking the same thing. This human was clearly insane, but insane might be exactly what they needed right now. What would you need from us? She asked carefully. Jax's expression became slightly more serious, though the manic glint never left his eyes. Access to your ship's systems, your crew's help, and an open mind. Human ships from this era were built with something we've lost in modern designs: modularity. Every piece was designed to potentially fit with every other piece, like the universe's most dangerous Lego set. Your ship's framework is compatible enough. We can graft human military-grade shields onto your hull, replace those shot engines with something that has actual punch, maybe even slap on a few weapon systems that'll make raiders think twice. You're talking about turning a mining vessel into a warship, Volta observed. I'm talking about turning a sitting duck into a soaring eagle, Jax corrected. Look around you. This battlefield has everything we need. Heavy cruiser engines that still have 60% functionality. Point defense systems that just need new power couplings. Armor plating that's taken hits from weapons that don't even exist anymore and survived. It's all here, waiting to be useful again. The human's enthusiasm was infectious, but Zara had to be practical. What's in it for you? Why help us? For the first time, Jax's expression softened slightly. I've been out here for 3 years, Captain. 3 years studying these wrecks, learning their secrets, keeping their memory alive. These ships they fought in the Battle of Broken Dreams. Last stand of the Earth Empire against the Dissolution Fleet. 40,000 humans died here, but they stopped the enemy cold. Their sacrifice gave the colonies time to evacuate, saved millions of lives. He paused, looking out at the debris field with something approaching reverence. Every ship out there has a story. The Indomitable over there took out 3 dreadnoughts before her reactor went critical. The Swift Retribution used her own hull to shield evacuation transports. They deserve better than floating here forgotten. If I can give pieces of them new life, let them sail the stars again, even if it's just as part of your ship. Well, that's payment enough for me. Another alarm began beeping on Zara's console. Long-range sensors were picking up jump signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts moving in search patterns. Looks like your raider friends are persistent, Jax observed, his fingers already dancing over his own controls. They're using tracking algorithms to follow your jump trail. At their current search pattern, they'll find us in maybe 6 hours. What do you say, Captain? Want to see what human engineering and a little creative insanity can accomplish? Zara looked at her damaged ship's status displays, then at the graveyard of legends surrounding them. The smart play would be to try running on what little engine power they had left. The safe play would be to surrender to the raiders and hope for ransom instead of death. But humans didn't become a galactic power by playing it safe. "Mr. Cooper," she said, a small smile crossing her face. "Show us what you can do." Against all odds, Jax's salvage craft latched onto the persistent Dream's hull with magnetic grapples, and within minutes, the eccentric human was aboard, trailing 2 cargo sleds packed with tools that looked like they'd been assembled from parts of at least a dozen different species' technologies. He moved through the damaged corridors with surprising grace, occasionally stopping to run his hands along bulkheads or peer into exposed conduits. "Beautiful bones," he muttered, more to himself than the engineering team following him. Meridian class. Ships were built to last. See these support struts? Triple redundant titanium composite. You could strap a battleship's main gun to this frame and she'd hold. Volta's optical sensors whirred as they processed this information. That seems like an excessive exaggeration. Jax's grin was answer enough. "Want to test it?" They reached the main engineering bay, where the damage was most evident. The primary engine core was cracked, leaking exotic particles that sparkled in the emergency lighting. Secondary systems were firing randomly, trying to compensate for damages they couldn't hope to repair. "All right, gather round. Class is in session," Jax announced, pulling up a holographic display from his wrist computer. The projection showed the persistent Dream in her current state, with damaged sections highlighted in red. With a few gestures, he began overlaying components from the graveyard. "See that behemoth out there? The Terminus Decree, Phoenix-class heavy assault carrier. Her engines are shot, but her power distribution network is intact. We pull that, graft it onto your existing systems, and suddenly you can channel 3 times the energy through your ship. Over there, the relentless Dawn has shield generators that could stop a moon. They're power-hungry beasts, but with the Terminus's distribution grid," his hands danced through the hologram, pieces fitting together like a 3-dimensional puzzle. The persistent Dream began to transform in the projection, her mining vessel profile becoming something altogether different. The beauty of human, military engineering from this era, Jax continued, his excitement building, was standardization. Every connection port, every power coupling, every data interface, all built to universal specifications. It was supposed to make field repairs easier during the war. They never imagined someone would be doing this kind of wholesale reconstruction. But the principle holds. Chief Petty Officer Banks, one of the few humans in Zara's crew, studied the projection with a mixture of awe and concern. "This is insane. You're talking about major structural modifications. The stress alone will be distributed across these reinforcement points," Jax interrupted, highlighting specific areas. "We're not just slapping parts together. This is surgical grafting. Your ship already has the anchor points. They're what hold your mining equipment. We just repurpose them." Zara watched from the engineering bay's upper platform as her crew began to warm to the idea. Even Crix, normally the most cautious of her officers, was leaning in to examine the specifications. "How long?" she asked. Jax checked his chronometer. "Raiders will be here in 5.5 hours. We need 4. "That's impossible," Volta stated flatly. "Impossible with normal procedures," Jax agreed. "But we're not doing normal. We're doing something humans perfected during the frontier. War's combat engineering. Quick, dirty, and just stable enough to work. Everyone suit up. We're going to be working in vacuum to save time." What followed was organized chaos. Jax had clearly done this before, directing the crew with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. 2 teams went out to the graveyard, cutting free selected components with plasma torches and mining lasers. Another team prepped the persistent Dream's hull, removing damaged plating and exposing the structural framework beneath. Jax himself took on the most dangerous job, sinking the alien power systems. Each component came from a different ship, with different operational histories and quirks. Making them work together required not just technical knowledge, but an almost intuitive understanding of how systems wanted to behave. "See, machines have personalities," he explained to Banks while elbow-deep in a power coupling. This shield generator from the Relentless Dawn? She's aggressive, wants to pull all available power the moment she's activated. But these engine pods from the Starlight Serenade are more conservative. They like to build up slowly. You have to introduce them to each other gradually, like mixing volatile chemicals. 3 hours in, they hit their first major snag. The weapon systems Jax had salvaged, a pair of railguns from a destroyer, wouldn't integrate with the persistent Dream's targeting system. Our computers can't even recognize the weapon type, Dash reported, frustration evident in her voice. It's like trying to translate a language that doesn't exist anymore. Jack stared at the incompatible systems for a long moment, then suddenly brightened. We don't translate, we bypass. He darted to his tool sled and pulled out what looked like a heavily modified gaming console from at least a century ago. Manual, control. Wire the guns directly to this. Slave it to your main sensors for basic tracking, but let the operator handle the fine control. That's Stone Age, Crix protested. Stone Age humans killed mammoths with pointy sticks. Jack shot back. Sometimes simple is better. Who's your best instinctive shooter? It turned out to be Dash, whose species had evolved from aerial predators and possessed incredible hand-eye coordination. Within minutes, she was practicing with the makeshift control system, her feathered fingers dancing over controls that looked like they belonged in a museum. 4 hours and 17 minutes after they'd started, the transformation was complete. The persistent Dream no longer looked like a mining vessel. She was something unique, a chimera of different eras and technologies. Her hull was now clad in armor plates of varying colors and styles, creating an almost camouflage pattern. The massive engines from the Starlight Serenade jutted from her stern like oversized muscles, while the shield generators created visible distortions in space around her. It's ugly, Volta observed. Ugly as sin, Jax agreed proudly. But functional. You've got shields that can take a dreadnought's broadside, engines that can outrun anything short of a racing yacht, and enough firepower to make attackers think twice. Plus a few surprises I threw in for fun. Surprises? Zara asked warily. Before Jax could answer, proximity alarms began wailing. The raiders had found them faster than anticipated. 3 ships dropped out of jump space at the edge of the debris field, their predatory profiles immediately recognizable. They're hailing us, Dash reported. The lead raider's captain appeared on screen, a scarred Kelloan whose reputation for brutality was well known in the outer systems. His expression of triumph faltered slightly as he took in the persistent Dream's new appearance. Captain Chen, he growled, you've led us quite a chase. Surrender now and I might let your crew live as slaves. Try to run again, and I'll space you all slowly. Zara stood from her command chair, squaring her shoulders. Counteroffer. You leave now and I won't demonstrate what human military engineering can do to your tin cans. The raider laughed, a sound like grinding metal. You bolted some scrap to your hull and think it makes you a warship? All ships, attack pattern Theta. Disable their engines first. I want them alive. The 3 raider ships accelerated, spreading, out to attack from multiple angles. It was a textbook assault pattern, one that had served them well against countless merchant vessels. But the persistent Dream was no longer a merchant vessel. Shields up, Zara commanded. The Relentless Dawn's generators hummed to life, and suddenly the space around them shimmered with barely contained energy. The raiders' opening salvo struck the shields and simply disappeared, absorbed into the defensive matrix like rain into an ocean. Their weapons are about 40 years behind this shield tech, Jax observed casually. Might as well be throwing rocks at a tank. Return fire, Zara ordered. Dash's fingers flew over her improvised controls, and the salvaged railguns spoke. Hypersonic projectiles crossed the void in seconds, and the lead raider ship's shields flickered and died under the impact. The second shot punched through their hull like paper, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. The remaining 2 raiders immediately changed tactics, accelerating to attack speed and trying to overwhelm them with close-range fire. But the Starlight Serenade's engines roared to life, and suddenly the bulky mining vessel was dancing through space with fighter-like agility. How is this possible? Crix gasped, gripping his console as the ship pulled maneuvers that should have torn her apart. Inertial dampeners from a racing yacht. structural reinforcement from a battleship, and engines from a ship designed to chase comets, Jax explained, clearly enjoying himself. Also, I may have borrowed some illegal military-grade navigation software that technically doesn't exist. The second raider tried to ram them, a desperation move. Zara smiled coldly. Mr. Cooper, those surprises you mentioned. Thought you'd never ask? Jax hit a switch on his console. Panels along the Persistent Dream's hull suddenly opened, revealing rows of mining charges that had been hastily converted into impromptu mines. They launched in a spreading pattern, too close for the attacking raider to avoid. The explosions tore through their weakened shields, leaving them drifting and powerless. The last raider, seeing both allies destroyed or disabled, turned to flee. But as they began to power up their jump drive, Dash landed a perfect shot on their engines. The ship tumbled helplessly through space, all threats neutralized in less than 3 minutes of combat. The bridge was silent for a moment, then erupted in celebration. Even Volta's mechanical form seemed to radiate satisfaction. But Jax was already moving, heading for the airlock. "Where are you going?" Zara called after him. He turned back, that manic grin still in place. "Got 3 more ships to strip for parts now. Waste not, want not. Besides, you're going to need spare components. This beautiful monster we've created is going to need maintenance, and something tells me standard repair docs won't quite know what to make of her." Zara looked at her transformed ship's status displays. Everything was running, but nothing was running quite as originally intended. Power flowed through pathways never meant to exist. Shields drew from engines that predated them by decades, and weapons spoke in languages her computers couldn't fully understand. It should have been a disaster. Instead, it was magnificent. "Mr. Cooper," she said, making a decision, "how would you like a permanent position? Chief Innovation Officer, or whatever title you'd prefer. The Persistent Dream is going to need someone who understands her new personality." Jax's eyes lit up. "You mean I get to keep tinkering with her, adding new bits as we find them? Maybe a cloaking system from that stealth corvette over there, or those experimental plasma cannons from the—" "Within reason," Zara interrupted quickly, though she was smiling. "Captain," Crick spoke up, his scales shifting to patterns of curiosity. "What do we tell the authorities when we return? This ship is no longer legally a mining vessel. It's not legally anything recognizable." Zara considered this, then shrugged. "We tell them the truth. We survived. We adapted. We overcame. And if they have a problem with how we did it, they can take it up with our new weapon systems." The crew laughed, the sound echoing through their chimera ship. Outside, the graveyard of giants continued its eternal drift, but now it had given up some of its ghosts. Pieces of legendary ships would sail again, carrying on their legacy in the most human way possible. Not pretty, not according to plan, but absolutely, undeniably effective. As they prepared to jump back to civilized space, Jax was already sketching new modifications on his holographic display, muttering about stealth plating and automated repair drones. The Persistent Dream had become something unprecedented, a testament to human creativity, desperation, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat. The raiders had expected to find easy prey. Instead, they'd found what humans had always been at, their core. Adapters, survivors, and masters of making the impossible possible with whatever tools at hand. And in the vast graveyard of forgotten heroes, their spirits surely approved.